My name is Leah, and the story I'm about to share didn't start with fireworks or a big tragedy. It started in the middle of a sleepy summer afternoon in a dusty town called Maplewood, where the streets were quiet, the sun was always hot, and children ran barefoot until the stars came out. Back then, I didn't know how much the world could change. I didn't know how deeply unfair life could be, or how one kind person could stand up for the truth, even when the whole town turned their back. But I remember the day that changed everything. That lazy Maplewood summer. It was the summer of my 11th year. I was still more interested in tree houses than dresses, and I spent most of my time with my older brother, Jonas, who was 13 and swore he'd never grow up to be anything like Dad, though everyone knew he already talked and walked just like him. Our father was Mr. Samuel Hart, the only lawyer in town who still wore a suit in 100-degree heat and believed every human being deserved to be treated fairly, whether rich or poor, black or white, young or old. He didn't say much, but when he did, you listened. A new neighbor moves in. In that summer, something unusual happened. We got a new neighbor. He was quiet, strange. He never played with us, never came out during the day. His name was Aaron, and he lived with his grandmother in the house with the cracked windows and the lonely porch swing. Rumors spread like wildfire. Did you hear? That boy's mama ran away. Someone said he doesn't talk at all, not even in school. They say he talks to himself in the dark. But I wasn't afraid of Aaron. I was curious. So one afternoon, I did what Jonas told me not to do. I climbed the fence and said hello. The first real conversation. He didn't smile, not even a little, but he nodded. That was enough. We started sitting under the old maple tree that stood between our homes. I brought him books. He gave me wildflowers. We didn't talk much at first, but over time, I found out something important. Aaron wasn't strange. He was just quiet because people never listened. He was the first person I met who truly saw the world, who noticed the way the wind moved through the grass, or how an ant carried more than it should. He'd point out things others ignored. I started learning a new way of looking at life. Dad's case. One evening, Dad came home looking tired. Not just work tired, heart tired. Jonas and I sat at the dinner table while Mom served beans and cornbread, and that's when he said something that made the air go still. I've been assigned to defend a boy named Elijah Brown, accused of stealing from Mr. Hargrove's store. Jonas dropped his fork. Wait, he said. You mean the Elijah who lives in the East End? The boy who fixes bicycles? He's barely 15. Dad nodded. He says he's innocent. And you believe him? I asked. I don't need to believe him. Dad said quietly, I just need to give him a fair trial. That's what justice means. That was the first time I truly saw my father. Not just as Dad, but as a man who stood against the wind, even when it blew hard against him. Trouble brews. The next day, whispers began in town. People muttered at the bakery. They stared at us at church. Some men even walked past our house at night, coughing loudly, spitting in the grass. They didn't like that my father was defending that boy from the poor side of town. Your father's putting our whole town at risk, one woman told me at the market. Someone like Elijah doesn't deserve a lawyer, said another. Best if you and your brother stay quiet about this. I didn't understand it then, but now I know. When truth threatens comfort, people grow cruel. A gentle moment. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, I found Aaron waiting under the tree. He looked sad. He held a small bird in his hands, a mockingbird with a broken wing. What happened? I asked. Some kids were throwing stones, he said. It was just singing. It never hurt anyone. We sat in silence. He placed the bird gently in a box lined with cotton and whispered, "Some things deserve to be protected." That night, I wrote in my notebook, the ones who don't fight back, the quiet ones, the ones who sing, maybe they're the ones who need us most. The days after Dad took Elijah's case felt like a slow storm brewing. The kind of storm that doesn't make noise at first, but you can feel it. You can feel it in the way people look at you, the way they stop talking when you walk into the room, the way the air gets heavier. That summer, Maplewood wasn't the friendly little town I thought I knew. The market silence. Every Saturday, I'd walk with Mama to the town market. Rows of stalls with fresh bread, sweet apples, and jars of honey that smelled like sunshine. But now, nobody smiled at us. Mrs. Calloway, who used to give me free cinnamon sticks, wouldn't even look at me. One man, I didn't know his name, muttered, "That's the daughter of the traitor lawyer." I didn't understand. My father wasn't a traitor. He was just helping someone. Isn't that what good people do? That night, I asked Dad, why are they so angry at us? He looked up from his paperwork and said softly, because sometimes people get comfortable believing lies. And when you speak the truth, it makes them uncomfortable. Elijah's story. A few days later, Elijah came to our home. He had short, tightly curled hair and big eyes that looked like they'd seen more than a boy his age should. He sat stiffly at our kitchen table while Dad poured him lemonade. "I didn't steal nothing," Elijah said. "I was fixing Mr. Rowley's bicycle. I was there the whole afternoon." "But no one will stand up for you?" Dad asked. Elijah shook his head. "People like me, we don't get listened to." And then, for the first time in my life, I noticed something. His hands were rough, covered in grease from all the bikes he fixed. His shirt was worn. His shoes had holes, but his eyes told the truth. Aaron's secret. That evening, I ran to the tree to find Aaron. He was already there, sketching in a notebook. I told him about Elijah, about the trial, about the way people were treating us. Aaron looked up and said something I'd never forget. "I know what that's like." "What do you mean?" I asked. He hesitated. Then he rolled up the sleeve of his shirt. On his arm, there was a long, pale scar. "My dad, he hurt me. That's why I don't talk much. People only believe what they want. And they didn't want to believe my story." I sat there, stunned. That was when I realized some people carry pain not on their faces, but in their silence. Dad's warning. The night before the first court hearing, Dad came into our room. He looked more serious than I'd ever seen him. "I want you two to be careful," he said. looking at me and Jonas. Don't go out alone. Don't respond to the whispers. And most of all, remember why we're doing this. Because it's right, Jonas said quickly. Dad nodded. Exactly. Even when it's hard. The English lesson, hidden in stories. By listening to this story, you're learning real-life English. The kind people actually speak when they care, when they're afraid, and when they try to do what's right. You're learning how to express courage, fear, hope, empathy. This is how you truly learn English, not just with grammar, but with feelings. Life reflection. That week changed everything. The trial hadn't even started, and yet people had already made up their minds. But truth isn't always what the loudest voices say. Truth sometimes lives in quiet places, in the eyes of a boy fixing bicycles, or the sketchbook of a quiet neighbor. The Maplewood Courthouse wasn't a grand building. It stood on Main Street, between the barber shop and the diner, with white paint peeling off its old wooden walls and a dusty flag fluttering above the entrance. But that summer morning, it felt like the center of the universe. People packed the room like it was a show. Some leaned forward with arms crossed. Others whispered behind their hands. And all of them were there for one reason: to see if Elijah Brown, a boy from the East End, would be found guilty. The courtroom. Buzz, Jonas, and I sat on the hard wooden bench in the back, watching as Dad stood calmly at the defense table beside Elijah. His shoulders were square, his voice calm but strong. The prosecutor, Mr. Hargrove's lawyer, was loud and dramatic. He pointed his finger a lot. He kept calling Elijah that boy instead of using his name. He told the jury, Mr. Hargrove saw the boy near the store the day the money disappeared. Isn't that enough? But there was no evidence. No fingerprints. No witness. Just a feeling. Dad stood and said, a feeling isn't proof. Justice must be based on facts, not fear. The bicycle shop. Truth. Then something happened. A tall, thin man in a leather apron stood up in the courtroom. It was Mr. Rowley, the bicycle shop owner. I'd like to speak, he said. The judge looked surprised. You may approach. Mr. Rowley cleared his throat and said, Elijah was fixing my son's bicycle that day. He was in my shop from noon to nearly 5. I saw him with my own eyes. Gasps filled the room. The prosecutor stammered. But he never said that before. Mr. Rowley nodded. No one ever asked. And just like that, the whole room shifted. It was like a breeze had blown through a place that had been shut too long. The ugly side of town. But not everyone was happy. That evening, as we walked home from the courthouse, we found red paint smeared across our front gate. Someone had written, Traitor. Jonas clenched his fists. They're scared. That's why they're doing this. Dad calmly washed it off with a sponge. Let them talk, he said. Our job isn't to make them comfortable. Our job is to do what's right. And I remember thinking, bravery doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like a man scrubbing hateful words with gentle hands. Learning English through real emotion. You just heard courtroom arguments, character dialogue, and emotional storytelling. The kind of English used in real life, in serious moments. Listening to these helps you understand formal versus emotional speech, learn persuasive words and moral expressions, practice listening with feeling. This is how your brain starts thinking in English, not just translating. A quiet gesture. The next morning, I found something on our porch, a single white lily tied with a piece of brown string. No note. I knew who it was from. Aaron. He never said much, but that flower meant something. I'm watching. I believe you. Keep going. Sometimes, one small act of support is louder than 1,000 voices of hate. The trial moved slowly, like a wagon through thick mud. Every day brought more questions, more silence, and more tension in the air. In Maplewood, the courthouse had never seen so many people attend a single case. It wasn't just about Elijah anymore. It had become something bigger, a battle between truth and tradition, between justice and judgment. The day Elijah spoke. Elijah finally took the stand. He stood in front of the jury, hands folded, eyes steady but nervous. Dad asked gently, "Tell us what happened that day." Elijah's voice was calm, but you could hear the weight in it. "I went to Mr. Rowley's shop to fix his son's bicycle. I stayed the whole afternoon. I even skipped lunch because I wanted to finish the job." The prosecutor leaned forward. "And why would Mr. Hargrove say he saw you near the store?" Elijah paused. "Because he always looks at me like I don't belong, like I'm just trouble." The room went silent. Everyone heard the pain beneath his words, the truth too many tried to ignore. The cross-examination. Then came the hard part. The prosecutor tried to twist Elijah's words. "So you admit you've been near the store before?" "Yes, sir. I walk past it every day." "And you know Mr. Hargrove doesn't like you?" "Yes. So maybe you were angry. Maybe you decided to take what you thought you deserved." Elijah didn't raise his voice. He didn't cry. He simply said, "No, sir, I fix bikes. I don't steal." That answer, spoken with quiet courage, landed harder than any shout ever could. Trouble. At a night, that evening, someone threw a rock through our window. It shattered the glass and landed on the kitchen floor. Wrapped around it was a note that read, "Drop the case or leave town." Jonas picked up the rock and looked at Dad. "What now?" Dad didn't flinch. He picked up the broom. "We clean up. We move forward." Even I felt afraid, but I learned something that night. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward in spite of it. Why? This story improves your English. By listening to scenes like a courtroom cross-examination, you learn how to defend your opinion in English, how to speak with confidence and clarity, how to understand tone, emotion, and emphasis in native conversation. This helps you speak English not just like a student, but like a thinker. Aaron's drawing. The next day, Aaron handed me a piece of paper. On it was a drawing. A picture of Elijah sitting calmly in the courtroom, surrounded by shadows. But above his head was a single light. I stared at it. "Why did you draw this?" Aaron shrugged. Because even when no one sees the truth, it's still there. He paused, then added quietly, people need to remember that. A twist appears. Just when it seemed like everything was stacked against Elijah, something changed. Dad received a letter, unsigned, left at our door. Inside was a receipt. It showed that Mr. Hargrove had made a large deposit at the bank just 2 hours after reporting the theft. The amount? Almost exactly what was claimed stolen. Someone knew something, and they were starting to speak. Maplewood had always prided itself on being peaceful, quiet, and proper. But ever since the trial began, shadows had stretched across its streets. Not just the shadows of night, but the shadows of truth people refused to face. And now, someone had broken the silence. The anonymous letter. Dad held the bank receipt in his hand. The paper was wrinkled, the ink slightly smudged. But the numbers were clear. $983.75 deposited by Mr. Hargrove, just 2 hours after the theft was reported. That was more than suspicious. It was a trail. Jonas frowned. Why would someone send us this and not sign their name? Because they're afraid, Dad replied. But isn't the truth supposed to be stronger than fear? Dad looked at us. Yes, but only if someone is brave enough to speak it out loud. A visit to the bank. The next day, we visited the town bank. Mrs. Dillingham, the bank clerk, greeted us with tight lips and narrowed eyes. She recognized Dad, and she knew why we were there. Dad asked, "Do you remember this deposit from Mr. Hargrove?" She hesitated. "We don't give out customer information." Dad smiled gently. "I'm not asking for his secrets, just confirmation. He claimed to have lost this exact amount, but then he deposited it the same day." She looked around, then leaned forward. "He told me it was from a personal loan, but he was sweating, and he asked me to keep quiet." That was enough. Enough to ask questions in front of the court. Aaron's secret. Meanwhile, Aaron became more distant. He barely spoke. He didn't draw. He skipped school. Something was weighing on him. One evening, I found him sitting by the stream behind the schoolyard, staring at the water. "Are you okay?" I asked. He didn't answer at first. Then he whispered, "I saw something that day, behind the store." My heart raced. "What did you see?" He turned to me. It wasn't Elijah. Learn English with deep emotion and real scenarios. This chapter introduces you to polite but direct questioning, useful in interviews, debates, and real-world conversations. Understanding hesitation and implication in dialogue. Learning to express secrets, doubts, and clues. The language of mystery and emotion. All of this helps you go beyond textbooks and connect with real, natural English. The price of truth. Aaron was terrified, but he finally agreed to tell Dad what he saw. In private, with tears in his eyes, he confessed, "I saw Mr. Hargrove come out of his store. He took money from his own cash box and walked around the back. Then he went to the bank." "Did he seem rushed?" Dad asked gently. Aaron nodded. He looked nervous, like he didn't want anyone to see. That changed everything. Courtroom storm. When Dad brought this information to court, the prosecutor tried to shut it down. "This is hearsay," he shouted. "It's just a child's word." But then Dad pulled out a surprise, the deposit receipt, confirmed by the bank clerk. And just like that, the tide began to turn. The courthouse smelled like old wood and dust, but on the morning of Aaron's testimony, it felt electric. People filled every bench, reporters scribbled in their notebooks, and even those who once avoided eye contact with us now watched closely. Aaron was about to speak, and the truth was about to echo louder than ever before. Aaron takes the stand. He looked small, sitting in the witness chair. Just a 12-year-old boy with a nervous smile and a sketchpad in his lap. Dad stood beside him, calm and steady. "State your name, please," Dad said. "Aaron James Carter," he replied, voice trembling. "And do you remember the afternoon of the alleged robbery?" He nodded. "Yes, I was walking to meet my brother near the store." "Tell us what you saw." Aaron took a breath. His fingers clenched the edge of the sketchpad. Then he spoke clearly. "I saw Mr. Hargrove. He wasn't being robbed. He was carrying a box of money. He went out the back real fast. I followed him. He went straight to the bank." The courtroom gasped, the drawing that spoke volumes. Aaron lifted the sketchpad and flipped it around. He had drawn the back of the store, with Mr. Hargrove holding a wooden cash box, sweat on his brow. In the background, a tiny image of the bank door. It wasn't just a drawing. It was a memory. A moment frozen in time. The prosecutor objected. "A child's imagination. This proves nothing." But then, someone stood up from the back of the room. A new voice. It was Mrs. Dillingham, the bank clerk. She walked forward, voice shaking. "I wasn't going to say anything, but the boy is telling the truth." Gasps echoed again. "I remember Mr. Hargrove that day. He was in a rush. He told me not to mention the deposit. I thought maybe it was none of my business. But now—" She turned to the judge. "I want to submit a statement." Why this story makes you fluent faster. This chapter includes powerful English tools. Testimony language. State your name. Describe what you saw. Emotional vocabulary. How fear, truth, and courage sound in real speech. Persuasion techniques. Essential for debate, public speaking, and exams. Listening to such scenes helps train your brain to understand and speak with real impact. Truth takes flight. After the testimony, there was silence. Not awkward silence, but heavy, thoughtful silence. Even those who once whispered rumors about Elijah now looked away, ashamed. The judge announced a recess. Outside the courtroom, Dad sat with Elijah, Aaron, and me. "You did something brave today," he said to Aaron. "Not everyone would do that." Aaron looked down. "I just told the truth." Dad smiled. "Sometimes that's the bravest thing of all." The courtroom was no longer just a room. It was a storm, a place where silence had cracked and truth had spilled out like thunder. Aaron's drawing, Mrs. Dillingham's testimony, the deposit receipt. It all pointed in one direction. Now, the question wasn't if Elijah was innocent. It was why someone had tried so hard to make him look guilty. The judge returns. The courtroom doors opened. Judge Morales, a calm and thoughtful man, stepped back to the bench. He looked at Mr. Hargrove, then at the jury, then at Elijah. "The court has heard compelling evidence," he began. "And though we have yet to hear a final verdict from the jury, I must say," suddenly, Mr. Hargrove stood up. The breaking point, his face was pale, his voice cracked. "Stop," he said. All heads turned. Even the judge paused. I can't let this continue," Mr. Hargrove said. "It's gone too far." He looked at Elijah. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The truth comes out. "I staged the theft," Mr. Hargrove admitted. "Business was bad. I was behind on rent. I thought if I made it look like a robbery, I could claim the insurance." The room went completely still. "I didn't know who to blame," he continued. "But when I saw Elijah walking by, I thought, he's new, he's quiet, he won't fight back. I didn't think anyone would believe him. I didn't think anyone would care." He sat down, defeated, tears rolling down his cheeks. English tip: powerful language from confession scenes. In this chapter, we learn how to use admission language. I staged the theft. I didn't think. Emotional vocabulary. Guilt, shame, surrender. Present perfect and past simple. Advanced grammar patterns. These expressions are powerful in real storytelling, interviews, and even emotional conversations in English. Listening like this is how you internalize real fluency. The verdict. The judge took a deep breath. "Elijah Carter," he said, voice clear, "you are free to go." Cheers erupted in the courtroom. Aaron hugged Elijah. I cried. Dad just closed his eyes and smiled. Justice had finally won. Reflection time. What would you do if you were in Mr. Hargrove's place? Can guilt change someone? Have you ever been unfairly blamed for something? What helped you through it? Tell your story in the comments. Someone may learn from it. The trial was over. The gavel had fallen. Elijah was free. But the story didn't end in the courtroom, because sometimes the real battle begins after the verdict, in the hearts of those who watched and stayed silent. Elijah walks free. Outside the courthouse, the air was brighter. The crowd had spilled into the streets. Elijah stood tall, his mother holding his hand tightly. For the first time in weeks, he smiled, not because everything was fixed, but because someone believed in him. Reporters came rushing. "Elijah, how does it feel?" He paused. Then he said, "It feels like I can finally breathe again." But not everyone smiled. Faces turned away. Some townsfolk clapped. Others looked at the ground. The grocer, who had once refused to serve Elijah, now walked past without a word. The barber, who joked about those kinds of kids, avoided our eyes. The teacher who called Elijah trouble during roll call didn't show up at all. Guilt is a quiet companion. It doesn't always say sorry. It just hides behind excuses. English, you can feel. This chapter teaches how to use past perfect tense for emotional depth. He had once refused to serve Elijah. Passive voice for empathy. Elijah was free. He was blamed. Descriptive emotion vocabulary. Avoided. Clapped. Looked away. Guilt. Companion. These real feelings make your spoken and written English sound authentic and heartfelt. Back to school. When Elijah came back to school, the hallway went quiet. Some students muttered, "That's the boy from the trial." Others just stared. But then Aaron stepped beside him. So did I. And one by one, others followed. Not because it was easy, but because it was right. The principal's assembly. That week, our principal called a special assembly. He stood at the front, adjusting his glasses. What happened to Elijah Carter should never have happened in this school. Or this town, he said. He paused, then added, "And it happened because too many of us chose comfort over courage." We were all silent. Then the principal did something rare. He apologized, publicly, and he invited Elijah to speak. Elijah's voice. Elijah walked to the front. He didn't have a speech. He didn't need one. "I'm not angry anymore," he said, "but I still remember who stayed silent." "I don't want revenge. I want things to change." "I want people to speak up, not just for me, but for the next kid who feels alone." He looked out at all of us. Because justice doesn't live in courts. It lives in people. Justice had been served in the courtroom. Apologies had been made in the school. But healing? Healing takes time. And in the town of Maplewood, healing was only just beginning. Because even when a storm ends, the ground stays wet for a while. A divided town. Some people welcomed Elijah with smiles. The bookstore owner offered him a free novel. A local cafe renamed a milkshake after him, the Brave Berry Blitz. But not everyone celebrated. At the barber shop, someone muttered, "Why does he get all the attention now?" At the grocery store, a woman whispered, "They always play the victim." Elijah heard. I saw it on his face, but he never responded with anger, only silence and strength. A letter arrives. One day after school, Elijah checked the mail and found an envelope. There was no name on the front, just two words, "I'm sorry." He opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, carefully written in blue ink. "Dear Elijah, I was your classmate 2 years ago. You probably don't remember me. Back then, I laughed when others mocked you. I didn't mean to be cruel. I just wanted to fit in. I've thought about that a lot, especially after your trial. You didn't deserve what happened. I've changed. I hope you believe that. Thank you for being brave." A former coward. Elijah folded the letter slowly. He didn't cry. He just smiled. English lesson. Writing from the heart. This part helps you learn how to write letters with feeling. Phrases like, "I didn't mean to be cruel," "You didn't deserve what happened." Apology language. "I was wrong." "I've changed. I hope you believe that." These kinds of expressions are essential in real-world English, especially for personal writing and emotional conversations. Elijah's new mission. That weekend, Elijah stood up in our local library's community room. A dozen students sat in front of him, kids from different backgrounds, ages, and neighborhoods. He held a notebook in one hand and a new sign behind him. Justice Club. Speak, listen, act. I want this to be a space where no one is afraid to tell their truth, he said. I don't want anyone else to feel how I felt. Invisible. That was Elijah's way. He didn't fight back with fists or blame. He fought back with ideas. Town hall. Trouble word spread about the club. Some parents supported it, but others, they weren't so happy. This is turning our kids against us, one man said at the town hall. They're too young to talk about justice. Another woman cried. But then Mrs. Dillingham, the same woman who had stood up for Elijah in court, raised her hand. We told them not to speak before, she said. Now they finally are. Let's not silence them again. Silence. Then applause. Sometimes the hardest part of standing for justice is facing the people you once called family. Elijah had found peace. He had started a movement. He had forgiven strangers. But what happens when the person who hurt you the most is someone from your own past? A visitor at the door. It was a rainy afternoon when a knock echoed through Elijah's small living room. His mother opened the door, gasped, and nearly dropped the tea she was holding. There stood a man, mid-30s, tall, with tired eyes and a weathered jacket. His hands were trembling. Hello, Claire, he said softly. I came to see Elijah. Elijah stood up from the couch. He froze. His eyes widened. And for the first time since the trial, I saw fear in him. Dad, he whispered. A father's absence. Elijah's father had left when Elijah was just 7. No calls, no letters, no explanation. Only a quiet, empty chair at the dinner table. And now, years later, he was back. I heard about the trial, his father said. I watched it on the news, and I realized I'd missed everything. I want to make things right. But Elijah didn't speak, because sometimes silence isn't shyness, it's shock. English breakdown, deep emotional dialogue. In this scene, you learn simple past versus present perfect. I heard, I've missed, I want to make things right. Emotional expression in conversations. He froze. His hands trembled. He whispered. These phrases help you communicate emotional intensity in spoken English, especially when sharing personal stories. A walk in the rain. Later that evening, Elijah asked me and Aaron to wait outside. He walked with his father down the street, just the two of them. I watched through the car window as they stood by the old park bench. His father spoke. Elijah listened. Then Elijah spoke. His father cried. But when they returned, Elijah looked calm. I'm not ready to forgive him, he told us. But I'm ready to hear him. That was Elijah, strong, but never cruel. Aaron's secret. That night, as we walked home, Aaron was quiet, too quiet. Finally, he stopped and turned to me. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Something I should have told you before the trial." "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "The night Mr. Hargrove framed Elijah. I saw it. I was outside the store. I saw him put the cash in the toolbox. I didn't know what he was doing, but I was too scared to speak." I froze. "You waited until the trial to say something?" "I was afraid I'd get in trouble," he said. "I let it go on too long." The power of truth. The next day, Aaron stood up at the Justice Club and told everyone. "I let fear control me," he said, "and I hurt my best friend because of it." He turned to Elijah. "I'm sorry." Elijah didn't speak at first. Then he smiled and said, "Courage isn't being fearless. It's telling the truth anyway." The room exploded in applause. What about you? Have you ever kept a secret out of fear? How did it feel when you finally told the truth? Do you think every mistake deserves forgiveness? Write your story in the comments. You might help someone else let go of fear. Elijah never imagined leaving Maplewood. His world was this small town, its dusty roads, the old courthouse, the library's worn carpet. But one sunny afternoon, a letter arrived that would change everything. The invitation to speak it came on bright blue stationery, embossed with the seal of the state capital. Inside, the governor's office requested Elijah's presence to share his story about courage, truth, and justice before a panel of lawmakers. The letter praised his inspiring leadership and commitment to community. My heart raced when Elijah read it aloud at supper. Aaron's eyes lit up, Jonas's jaw dropped, and Dad looked both proud and concerned. Mom trembled with excitement, then quickly covered her mouth. Elijah's story had traveled farther than any of us expected. But not everyone was happy. A town divided. Word spread rapidly. At the coffee shop, customers whispered, "A boy from Maplewood. At the capital? Ridiculous. He'll just embarrass us." Yet, why give the spotlight to a child? Late that night, someone scrawled on the Justice Club's bulletin board, "Stay home, kid. You're not welcome." Aaron and I found the note at dawn. My stomach clenched. We knew some parents and town leaders worried that Elijah's voice would expose Maplewood's shame to the world. Elijah looked at us, his eyes calm. "They're scared," he said. "But fear isn't a reason to stay silent." Betrayal within the club. That week, the Justice Club met in the library's back room. A dozen students sat in a circle. We discussed speeches, practiced public speaking, and shared our hopes. Then the door creaked open. It was Maya Hernandez, one of the club's founding members. She had been quiet recently, her eyes flicking away whenever Elijah spoke. Today, she looked nervous, almost haunted. I can't keep going," she stammered. "My parents said if I help him, they'll cut me off. Rent, food, everything. They said Maplewood can't afford bad PR." Gasps filled the room. Some students looked shocked, others angry. Maya's confession was a knife twisting in our hopes. She slid a folded piece of paper onto the table. A text message from her mother demanding loyalty to the town over some boy's drama. Tears welled in Maya's eyes. I'm sorry. I want to stand for justice, but I need my family. Elijah rose, walking slowly to her side. I understand fear, Maya. We all feel it sometimes. But you're brave enough to tell the truth, here, in front of us. That counts for something. Maya nodded, wiping tears. I still believe in this club. I can't go to the capital with you. I'm sorry. Her words left a hollow ache. We realized that even among us, whom we trusted, fear could push someone away. English insight, handling difficult conversations. In this chapter, note expressions of conflict. I can't keep going. Dad looked concerned. Tears welled in Maya's eyes. Showing versus telling emotions. Instead of she was sad, we describe body language. Her eyes flicking away, voice trembling. Polite refusal language. I can't go. I'm sorry. I still believe. But these patterns are crucial for real-life conversations when discussing tough decisions or boundaries. The journey to the capital. On the morning of the trip, Maplewood streets were strangely quiet. A few townspeople held signs, some supportive. Go, Elijah. Others hostile. Maplewood pride. Keep him home. Dad drove us in our old sedan, packed with the notebooks, a laptop, and several of Elijah's drawings. Jonas sat up front, reading notes aloud. Aaron and I rode in the back, shoulders touching for comfort. Elijah stared out the window, calm but focused. As we crossed county lines, the rolling hills gave way to wide highways. The sunlight felt different, brighter, as if the world beyond Maplewood was calling him forward. A day in the State Hall. Walking into the Grand Capitol building was overwhelming. Marble floors gleamed, chandeliers hung from high ceilings, and banners proclaimed "Justice for All" along the walls. Reporters took photos. Officials shook hands. Elijah's turn came. He stood at the podium, feet planted firmly, voice steady. He spoke of his childhood in Maplewood, the dusty roads and the shade of the old maple tree. The day his father defended Elijah in court and taught him to stand for truth. How fear can divide a town and submission can silence good people. His vision for youth-led community clubs that hold local leaders accountable. His words resonated. Some lawmakers nodded. Others listened intently. Cameras flashed. And then, questions. A senator asked, "What would you tell families who fear social backlash for supporting justice?" Elijah took a breath. "I'd say fear might feel real, but regret over silence lasts longer. Supporting justice means everyone, no matter their age, can speak without being told to hide." Applause rose. Tears formed in Dad's eyes. Reflection and English practice. Note how Elijah transitions between personal narrative and broader message. My story shows our communities need polite, formal responses to tough questions. Thank you, Senator, for that question. I believe. Vocabulary. Backlash, accountability, resilient, regret, overcome. Listening to this speech helps you learn public speaking language, key for presentations, interviews, and persuasive essays. A major decision looms. We return to Maplewood as heroes. But the welcome was uneasy. Some neighbors cheered, others averted their eyes. Town leaders quietly met in the courthouse late that night. Whispers said they planned to propose a law restricting minors from representing the town at official events. It was subtle, hidden in legal jargon, but if passed, it would mean no more Justice Club initiatives, no more youth voices in local governance. Elijah learned of this at home. His face hardened with determination. He began drafting a petition. "This isn't just about me," he said. "It's about every kid in Maplewood who deserves a voice, who deserves to tell the truth." Sometimes injustice doesn't wear a uniform. It wears a smile. It hides behind official papers, polished speeches, and clever words. This time, the threat to justice wasn't a corrupt man or a stolen toolbox. It was a law. The proposal 1 week after Elijah returned from the state capital. The Maplewood Town Council introduced a new ordinance called Civic Responsibility Regulation 17A. The name sounded harmless, but hidden in the fine print was a clause. No person under the age of 18 shall serve in an official capacity as a community representative at state or regional events. It meant that Elijah and kids like him would be silenced. The Justice Club would lose its influence. Future students would be shut out. The message was clear. Thank you, but stay in your place. The club reacts. We gathered that afternoon in the library's back room. Aaron slammed the proposal on the table. "They're scared of us," he growled. "Scared of what truth looks like when it's young and loud." Jonas added, "They want polite silence, not powerful speeches." Even Maya came back, whispering, "I tried to talk to my parents. They told me to drop it, but I won't." Elijah looked at us calmly. "We can't fight fear with anger," he said. "We need to speak their language, respect, facts, and unity." We stared. "Let's call a town meeting." Organizing the town meeting. Over the next 5 days, we worked harder than ever. We made flyers in both English and Spanish. We knocked on doors. We visited churches, corner shops, and schools. Elijah even asked the mayor, publicly, for permission to speak before the council. Reluctantly, the mayor agreed. But there was one condition: 5 minutes, no more. English practice, public engagement vocabulary. In this part, pay attention to formal terms, ordinance, proposal, clause, serve in an official capacity. Persuasive phrases: we can't fight fear with anger. Let's call a town meeting. Practical English, knocking on doors, making flyers, community outreach. These are useful phrases for real-life civic discussions, debates, or organizing movements in English-speaking environments. The Town Hall Showdown. The hall was packed. More people than we'd ever seen at a town meeting. Some wore suits, others overalls. There were teachers, elders, students, even a few reporters from nearby cities. The room buzzed with tension. After a long list of budget items and zoning reports, the mayor finally called. "Elijah Taylor, 5 minutes." Elijah stood. He walked to the microphone, and he looked, not nervous, but centered. He began. Elijah's speech. Good evening. I stand before you not as a child, but as a citizen. I was falsely accused. I stood trial. I told the truth. I forgave. And I helped form a club that fights for fairness. And now, you want to pass a law that says my voice and voices like mine don't count because of our age. But let me remind you, Rosa Parks was young. Malala Yousafzai was younger. Greta Thunberg is still a teenager. Change doesn't ask for permission. You say this law protects us. But what it really protects is comfort. Comfort for those who don't want to hear what young people see. Don't punish the next Elijah. Don't silence the next truth teller. Let us speak. Let us serve. Let us shape the future we're going to live in. Thank you. The room fell into stunned silence. Then, thunderous applause. A surprising voice. As Elijah returned to his seat, one of the oldest council members, Mrs. Penelope Grant, stood slowly. She adjusted her glasses and spoke. 50 years ago, I protested segregation in this very town. I was arrested for sitting at a whites-only counter. Back then, they said we were too young to understand. I hear Elijah's words tonight, and I remember what it feels like to be told, wait your turn. I say, let the children speak. I vote against this ordinance. Gasps filled the hall. Then more voices joined hers. Council Member Ahmed, Council Member Royston. The vote swung. The ordinance failed. Victory and responsibility. After the meeting, people gathered around Elijah, shaking his hand, hugging him, thanking him. Even the mayor, once cold, approached and said, "You've got something rare, Elijah. Just don't forget to stay humble." Elijah smiled. "Yes, sir, but I'll never stay quiet." The Justice Club had not only survived, it had grown stronger, more respected, more united. But we all knew this was only the beginning. Reflective questions. Have you ever witnessed a rule or law used unfairly? If you had 5 minutes to speak to your town, what truth would you share? Would you speak up, even if you were afraid? Comment below. What would your 5-minute speech be about? Some victories are loud. Cheers, applause, headlines. Others are quiet, like a letter that changes everything. After defeating the ordinance, Elijah thought things would calm down. But the world had been listening. And the world was about to respond. The letter that changed everything. It came in a plain white envelope, addressed simply to Elijah Taylor, Maplewood Junior High, Room 14. Inside was a single sheet of expensive parchment with a gold crest at the top. We all gathered in the library as Elijah opened it. His hands were steady, but his eyes grew wide. He read aloud, "Dear Mr. Taylor, we are honored to invite you as a keynote speaker at the Global Youth Leadership Forum in Geneva, Switzerland this August. Your courage and clarity in the face of injustice have inspired youth and educators around the world. We believe your voice belongs on the international stage." We sat in stunned silence. Geneva? Keynote speaker? This was global. From Maplewood to the world. Everyone started talking at once. Aaron, "Dude, that's insane. You're going international." Maya, "How will we even afford this?" Jonas, "Do you need a passport, shots, a tuxedo?" Elijah sat quietly, holding the letter. I never imagined this. English practice, global opportunities, vocabulary. This part introduces new words and expressions related to international travel and events. Keynote speaker, the main speaker at a conference. Global forum, a meeting of people from around the world. Invitation, parchment, crest. Formal correspondence vocabulary. Speech, delegates, international platform. Public speaking and leadership words. Try using these terms in your own practice sentences or speeches. Preparing for the journey. Elijah's story hit local newspapers again. A non-profit organization even offered to fund the entire trip, including travel for one chaperone. He chose Mrs. Green, our English teacher and club advisor. They began preparations. Passport applications, speech drafts, Zoom calls with organizers, even learning a few phrases in French. We helped him rehearse every day after school. He spoke, we gave feedback. He stumbled, we laughed together. He practiced again. But as the departure day approached, a quiet fear grew in his eyes. Doubts before departure. The night before his flight, Elijah called a meeting at the treehouse. Guys, he said, what if I mess this up? Aaron frowned. What are you talking about? I'm just a kid from Maplewood. What if I go there and they expect someone smarter, braver? Maya shook her head. They invited you because you're you, the boy who stood for justice. That's who you bring. Jonas added, you're not going alone. You're carrying all of us with you. Elijah smiled, but we could see the nerves still dancing behind his calm face. Take off. The next morning, the whole school came to the airport. Handmade signs, group hugs. Even the principal held a banner. Maplewood believes in you. Elijah turned back one last time before walking through security. He raised a hand. Justice Club forever, he called out. We shouted it back. And then he was gone. First steps in Geneva. Geneva was a different world. Modern buildings shaped like glass sails. People speaking French, English, Arabic, and more. Mrs. Green helped Elijah check in and get settled. But the next morning was the big moment. His keynote speech before 2,000 students from 60 countries. He wore a suit and a pin of the Justice Club logo. He looked around the massive hall. His heart pounded. Then he stepped on stage and began. Elijah's opening lines. 3 months ago, I was almost expelled for a crime I didn't commit. Today, I'm standing here in Geneva, not because I'm special, but because I spoke up. I spoke up for fairness. I forgave when I didn't have to. I kept learning, even when it was hard. That's what young leaders do. We don't wait for justice. We become justice. The hall erupted in applause. And just like that, Elijah Taylor became more than a local hero. He became a global voice for youth justice. Life lesson. No matter where you're from or how old you are, your voice can move the world. Elijah didn't change his story to fit the world. He brought his story to the world, and the world listened. Audience questions. If you were invited to speak in another country, what would your speech be about? Have you ever doubted yourself before something important? How did you overcome it? If your story could inspire someone, who would you want to hear it? Comment below. Where would you take your story if the whole world listened? When Elijah spoke in Geneva, the world listened. But back home in Maplewood, something unexpected was happening. The story wasn't just about one boy anymore. It was about all of us. And while Elijah's light burned bright overseas, we were learning how to keep the flame alive right here. A new problem at school. 2 days after Elijah's speech, something strange happened. A substitute teacher in history class dismissed a student named Layla for wearing a scarf on her head. "It's distracting," the teacher said. The room went silent. Layla looked down, ashamed. No one said a word, except Maya. "That's her right," Maya said quietly. The teacher frowned. "Excuse me? She wears it for her religion. You can't tell her to take it off." Layla's eyes widened. No one had ever defended her like that before. A spark ignites. After school, Maya stormed into our Justice Club meeting. "I thought things would change after Elijah's case, but they're going back to normal, the wrong kind of normal." Jonas, ever the calm one, said, "Maybe this is our moment to act without Elijah." Aaron nodded. "Yeah, he lit the torch. Now we carry it." We called an emergency club meeting and invited students from every grade, background, and language. This time, we weren't just defending one student. We were creating a movement. English learning moment. Words for activism. This part introduces advanced vocabulary around equality and student rights. Discrimination. Unfair treatment based on differences. Advocacy. Public support for a cause. Inclusive. Welcoming to all people. Ally. Someone who stands up for others. Empowerment. Giving people the strength to act. Practice these words by describing a moment when you or someone you know stood up for justice. Our first petition. Without Elijah. We wrote a statement. Maplewood is for everyone. No student should be shamed for their religion, culture, or appearance. We demand clear policies that protect student rights and training for all staff. We got 234 signatures in 2 days. This time, no one tore it down. In fact, the principal called us in. A call from Geneva. In the middle of this, something amazing happened. Elijah called during one of our meetings. "Guys," he said, his voice full of wonder, "you won't believe it. After my speech, I was invited to join a youth panel for the United Nations Human Rights Council." Maya grinned. "Elijah, you're becoming a global activist." But Elijah waved it off. "You guys are the ones who inspire me. What you did for Layla, that's what matters." We told him about our petition, and he smiled proudly. "You don't need me to lead anymore," he said. "You're already doing it." Leading from Chateau within day, that moment felt big. Not because Elijah said it, but because it was true. We had learned something powerful. You don't need permission to lead. You just need the courage to begin. And when you act for justice, you're never alone. What changed? The school district agreed to revise its dress code policies. All staff were scheduled to undergo diversity and inclusion training. Layla, she started coming to club meetings every week, quiet at first, but slowly finding her voice, like a seed watered by courage. The ripple effect. Elijah's speech was shared on social media across continents. Students from Kenya, India, Brazil, and Poland started their own justice clubs, tagging Elijah and us. We weren't just part of a school movement anymore. We were part of a global youth revolution. And it started in a small school with one boy who said, "I didn't do it, but I won't stay silent." Language practice. Tip: use real-world stories to boost your fluency. Listen to stories like this one, and then retell it in your own words. This activates your vocabulary, speaking, and memory skills. Try recording a 1-minute summary of part 14 in your own voice. You'll be amazed at how much English you're using. Life lesson. Justice isn't one person's job. It's everyone's responsibility. You don't need to wait for permission to speak up. The world needs your voice, now. They say you can never come home the same person. That was true for Elijah. When he returned from Geneva, he wasn't just Elijah from room 14. He was Elijah Taylor, international youth advocate. But what we didn't realize was this: fame can unite. Fame can also divide. And the Justice Club was about to face its most dangerous enemy yet. Not from outside, but from within. Welcome home, hero. The whole school turned out to welcome Elijah back. Banners, cameras, a marching band. Even the mayor came to shake his hand. Elijah Taylor is a voice of this generation, the mayor said. Elijah smiled humbly, but we could see something in his eyes. He wasn't quite present, maybe exhausted, maybe overwhelmed. Maya noticed it first. "He's quieter than usual," she said. I shrugged. "He just needs time to adjust." But time didn't heal what came next. The pressure of being a symbol. Everywhere. Elijah went. People expected something. "Can you give a quote for our article?" "Join our youth board." "Lead this next protest." "Speak at this city event." Elijah, the boy who once felt invisible, now couldn't find a moment of silence. He missed 3 club meetings in a row. Jonas said, "He's just busy," but Aaron muttered, "Or maybe he thinks he's above all this now." The room fell silent. None of us wanted to say it, but we were all wondering the same thing. English learning, focus, identity in conflict. Vocabulary, words to focus on from this part. Overwhelmed, feeling like you can't handle everything. Resentment, quiet anger that builds up. Drift apart, when friends slowly become distant. Burden, something heavy you carry emotionally. Internal conflict, a struggle inside your own heart or mind. Practice writing about a time you felt torn between responsibility and personal peace. A leadership vote. Things came to a head when we proposed expanding the Justice Club into other schools. Our Aaron suggested electing new club co-leaders to share the workload. But Elijah showed up to that meeting for the first time in weeks. And when he heard the plan, he frowned. "You want to replace me?" he asked, his voice quiet but sharp. Maya shook her head. "No, but we need to grow, share the vision." Aaron folded his arms. "Maybe we need someone who's here, not just famous." The tension cracked the room like glass. Elijah stood up. "Fine, maybe I don't belong here anymore." And he walked out. The fallout. That night, the group chat exploded. Jonas, what just happened? Layla, we're supposed to be a club, not a celebrity fan group. Aaron, he forgot where he came from. Maya, don't turn on him. He's still Elijah. But no one really knew what to say. The next few days felt heavy, like a storm was coming. English practice tip. Debate time. Use this story to practice expressing opinions in English. For example, do you think Elijah should remain leader? Was the club right to push for new voices? How should leaders handle fame and friendship? Try writing or speaking your argument using phrases like, "in my opinion," "on one hand," but on the other hand, "I believe it's important because." Elijah's confession. A few days later, I found Elijah sitting alone on the library steps. No cameras, no crowd, just a boy and his thoughts. He looked up. "I didn't ask for any of this," he said. "The speeches, the praise. I just wanted to help one friend who was in trouble. And now I'm everyone's symbol." I nodded. "You inspired a lot of people." "But I lost myself," he whispered. "And maybe I lost all of you too." I sat down beside him. "You didn't lose us. You just forgot we're walking with you, not behind you." Life lesson. Leadership isn't about standing above others. It's about lifting them beside you. Even heroes need space to be human. Even leaders need time to listen, not just speak. When something breaks, you have two choices. One, walk away from the pieces. Two, pick them up and build something stronger. After the tension, the silence, and the walkout, we weren't sure where we stood with Elijah. But life doesn't wait for emotional clarity, and neither does a movement. What happened next reminded us that justice is never about just one person. It's about a community of voices rising together. The guest we never expected. 2 weeks after the fallout, something extraordinary happened. A woman walked into our Friday meeting. Graceful, tall, with kind eyes and a presence that made the room go still. She introduced herself. "My name is Alicia Browning. I work with the Human Rights Education Alliance, and I came to see the club that sparked a national conversation." Elijah, sitting at the back quietly, looked up in surprise. She continued, "You may not realize it yet, but what you've built here, it's rare. A student-led justice group that actually creates change." Alicia's story. She told us how she'd grown up in a place where no one listened to young people. "I once organized a protest at 15, she said. "They shut it down and called me naive. But that didn't stop me. I learned that change often begins with the youngest voices." She paused, then looked at us. "You all have the power to be multipliers. You don't just fight injustice, you inspire others to fight it too. That word stuck with us. Multipliers, English learning. Focus, advanced vocabulary for inspiration. Let's review a few powerful words from this part. Catalyst, something or someone that starts a major change. Mentorship, guidance from someone with experience. Empathy, understanding how others feel. Multiply kin, to grow in number or impact. Empower, to give someone the confidence or authority to act. Practice these words by describing a moment when someone empowered you or when you empowered someone else. A new proposal. After Alicia left, the room buzzed with energy. Maya stood up and proposed something bold. What if we don't just expand to nearby schools? What if we create a youth justice network across the country? Leila added, we could train student leaders, host monthly virtual meetups. Aaron, yes, even Aaron, nodded. We'd be like a justice chain. And then Elijah spoke, finally breaking his quiet streak. I'd like to help, but this time not as the face of it, just as part of the team. That sentence, it healed more than he knew. Roles undefined. We restructured the club that week. Maya became the network director. Aaron handled communications and outreach. Jonas led training and resources. Leila became inclusion and culture coordinator. Elijah, he became mentor and advisor. Not above, not behind, beside, listening, practice. Tip, listen to this story aloud or have a friend read it. Then try to retell it from someone else's point of view. For example, tell this part as if you're Maya. Or tell it from Alicia's eyes. This improves your empathy, vocabulary, and speaking fluency all at once. Life lesson. Movements are strongest when no one needs to lead alone. Great leaders don't just create followers. They create more leaders. Every movement has its moment of testing, not from the outside, but from within. Just as the Youth Justice Network was beginning to bloom, something unexpected happened. A quiet rumor began to spread. And like all rumors, it started small. Whispers in hallways, glances during meetings. Then suddenly, it became a storm. This time, the fight for truth wasn't in the streets or online. It was in Elijah's own school. The whisper. It began with a message in the anonymous suggestion box we had placed at our last school meeting. Can we trust someone who hid everything about his past? Nobody knew who wrote it. But once it was read aloud, people started asking questions. What do they mean? Is Elijah hiding something? Did he lie to us? Elijah froze. He looked like someone had punched the wind out of him. Maya tried to move on with the meeting, but the seed had been planted. That night, Elijah didn't answer anyone's messages. English learning. Focus. Words for conflict and doubt. Let's look at key terms. Rumor. A story people spread that may not be true. Mistrust. When people stop believing in someone. Speculation. Guessing without facts. Discredit. To harm someone's reputation. Integrity. Doing the right thing, even when no one sees. Try using these words in sentences about school or work challenges. Elijah's secret. A day later, He finally spoke. He gathered us in the library after school. No one else was around. He took a breath, and then he said something none of us expected. "There's something I never told you. I didn't lie, but I left out a chapter." We listened as he told us about his past in another city before he came to Maplewood, a city where his father had been arrested during a protest, a city where Elijah had once been afraid to speak up because of how much it cost his family. "I wasn't always this confident," he said. "I used to hide in silence. I thought if people knew that version of me, they'd think I was weak." There was a long pause. Then Layla said quietly, "That's not weakness. That's survival." The truth healed us that day. Something shifted again, not just in how we saw Elijah, but in how we saw ourselves. We realized that everyone has a version of their story they were afraid to tell. And sometimes being a leader doesn't mean being fearless. It means being honest, even when it's uncomfortable. English speaking practice idea. Try answering this question in English, aloud or in writing. Have you ever hidden a part of your story to protect yourself? Use phrases like, "At that time, I didn't feel safe to share." "Looking back, I think I was just trying to survive. Now I understand that being open helps others too." The network is tested. As we dealt with this, the wider youth justice network was facing its own challenge. A partner school in Riverview reported that their student leaders were being threatened online. Someone had created fake accounts, spreading lies about the club. They were scared, ready to quit. But this time, Elijah didn't hesitate. He joined the call with the Riverview team and shared his story publicly. "Rumors lose their power when we replace them with truth," he said. His vulnerability became their strength. Life lesson. Truth is heavy, but carrying it together makes it lighter. You don't have to be perfect to be a leader. You just have to be real. Every storm eventually clears. But what you build after the storm, that defines your legacy. After Elijah shared his story, something incredible happened. The doubt, the whispers, they started to fade. In their place came something stronger: respect, unity, and a plan that could change everything. The Justice Conference idea. It started as a spark from Maya. "What if," she said during one of our Sunday strategy calls, "we bring everyone together, every school, every club, from across the Youth Justice Network, for one weekend?" Layla's eyes widened. "You mean a national student conference?" "Yes," Maya nodded. "Not just to talk, but to train, to share, and to dream bigger." The room lit up with excitement. Jonas added, "Workshops, panels, even role-play simulations." Aaron suggested, "And let's live stream it. Let the world see what students are really capable of." Then Elijah, quietly but firmly, said, "Let's call it Voices Rising." And just like that, we had a name and a mission. English vocabulary. Spotlight. Words for vision and action. Let's learn a few words from this chapter of vision. Summit. A formal meeting or conference. Coalition. A group formed for a shared purpose. Agenda. The list of items to be discussed or achieved. Empowerment, giving power and confidence to others. Mobilize, to prepare and organize people to act. Practice. Write 3 sentences using these words as if you're planning your own school event in English. The pitch that went viral. To make the conference happen, we needed sponsorship. So, Aaron, who'd always been camera shy, surprised us all by creating a video pitch. It featured clips from our protests, classroom discussions, and Elijah's apology speech. The final line? We're not asking for power. We're reminding the world we already have it. We posted it on TikTok and Instagram. Within 24 hours, it had over 100,000 views. A day later, journalists started calling. Then nonprofits. Then a senator's office. Practice. This speaking prompt. Imagine you are pitching an event in English. Try saying this aloud. Hello, my name is your name. We're organizing a student justice summit to unite youth leaders. We believe young voices matter, and we need your support to make it happen. This builds your confidence, fluency, and persuasion skills. A surprising ally returns. 3 days before the conference date was finalized, someone walked into our school who no one expected. Principal Lawrence, the same man who once suspended Elijah. He stepped into the library, removed his cap and said, "I heard about what you're planning, and I'd like to help." The silence was thick. Aaron looked shocked. Maya raised an eyebrow. But Elijah, he smiled and extended his hand. "Welcome back, sir. Because true justice doesn't hold grudges. It builds bridges." The youth are ready. We confirmed the venue, a local university hall. Invites went out to 45 schools across the country. Students were coming by bus, train, and even plane. Everyone was preparing speeches, projects, and performances. This wasn't just a school club anymore. It was a movement. Life lesson. When people come together with purpose, fear loses its power. One voice starts the ripple, but many voices, they create a wave. The day had arrived. Hundreds of students, dozens of schools, one mission. The university auditorium buzzed with energy. Banners lined the walls. Badges, notebooks, and camera crews were ready. It was the first ever Voices Rising Justice Summit, and we were the hosts. But little did we know, a storm was brewing behind the scenes, and before the day was over, it would test everything we'd built. Opening words. Elijah stood at the podium. He looked out at the crowd, rows and rows of students from all over the country. He began. They said young people couldn't lead. They said we didn't know enough. They said we should wait our turn. We say, our time is now. The room erupted in applause. The summit was officially open. Workshops began, panels flowed with debate. Maya led a session on peaceful advocacy. Aaron guided digital activism tactics. And I, Layla, hosted a spoken word poetry circle. Everything was perfect. Until lunchtime. English learning. Focus, crisis vocabulary. Here are key words you'll find in today's part. Sabotage, when someone tries to secretly damage a plan. Anonymous, when a person hides their identity. Smear, false claims to ruin someone's reputation. Accusation, a statement blaming someone for something, resilience, strength to recover from difficulty. Try using each in your own sentence aloud, the incident. We were in the hallway when Jonas ran up, pale and sweating. "There's a problem," he gasped. He showed us his phone. A fake news article was spreading on social media. It claimed that Elijah had staged the summit to promote himself. It used doctored photos and misquoted clips from old protests. Worse, it had already reached local news outlets, and someone had distributed printed versions around the university. Panic and pressure. The atmosphere shifted. Some students whispered. Others walked out. A few adult volunteers began pulling us aside, asking for explanations. Elijah went silent. For the first time since this journey began, he looked afraid. "I should step down," he said quietly, "before this ruins everything." But Maya put her hand on his shoulder. "No, you don't run from lies. You face them with truth." Elijah's brave speech. Elijah walked back onto the main stage without warning. The hall dimmed. Cameras clicked. The crowd hushed, he said. "Some people fear youth with power, so they spread lies. I could hide. I could quit. But that's what they want. So I say this clearly. I'm not here for attention. I'm here for change. And you're not just students. You are voices. You are fire. You are the future." The room roared. Phones went up. Hashtags exploded. Voices. Rising was trending within the hour. English practice prompt. Speaking challenge. Imagine you're facing a false accusation. How would you respond calmly and clearly? Use phrases like, "That information is not true, and here's why." I understand the concern, but let's look at the facts. I stand by my intentions. The movement stands. Tall by evening, multiple news sources issued clarifications. The student media team posted behind-the-scenes videos showing the truth of Elijah's leadership. And something magical happened. Other youth leaders began sharing their stories of being doubted, dismissed, or attacked, and how they rose above it. Voices Rising became more than a summit. It became a symbol. Life lesson. Truth doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers through courage and still wins. Every movement has a beginning, but when it continues, long after the first step, that's when it becomes history. The Voices Rising Summit had survived the storm, and now, as the final day began, we didn't know we were about to witness something unforgettable. The moment that would change Elijah's life forever. The final morning. It was the last day of the summit. Exhaustion was in the air, but so was excitement. Maya was organizing closing remarks. Aaron had gone viral again. His "Youth are the New Leaders" speech had hit 2 million views overnight. But Elijah? He stood alone on the balcony, quiet, reflective, ready. Then Jonas ran toward us with his mouth open like he'd seen a ghost. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Elijah, you're about to meet someone very important. English learning, fame, and recognition, vocabulary. Let's learn a few words connected to public success." Recognition, being acknowledged for your work. Legacy, what you leave behind after you're gone. Commendation, an official praise or award. Influencer, someone who inspires others through their actions. Testimonial, a personal story shared as support. Try writing your own short testimonial about a moment when you felt proud of something. The surprise guest. At 11:30 a.m., the auditorium darkened. A hush fell over the crowd. Then the MC spoke. Please welcome U.S. Senator Diane Matthews. Gasps filled the room. Senator Matthews had built her reputation on justice reform. She was famous for saying, "Change will come, but only if the young demand it." She stepped on stage and looked straight at Elijah. "Elijah James," she said, "I watched your story. I read the lies and the truth. You didn't just stand up. You didn't just apologize. You created space for others to rise with you." Then she pulled out a folder. "In my hand is a letter of recommendation for National Youth Leadership Programs. I want you to apply. You belong there." The crowd went silent. Elijah's hands trembled. Then came the loudest standing ovation I'd ever heard. Practice speaking prompt. Try saying this aloud in English. When I speak up, I don't just speak for myself. I speak for those who are still afraid to use their voice. That's why I'll never be silent again. Speaking powerful phrases builds confidence and fluency. What came after? In the weeks that followed, the Youth Justice Network tripled in size. Schools began forming their own Voices Rising chapters. Elijah received interview requests from global media outlets, but he remained humble. One day he said to us, "I didn't plan to become a leader. I just refused to stay silent." We smiled because we knew that's exactly what made him one. Graduation day. Months later, we all stood on stage again, this time in graduation robes. Elijah was chosen as valedictorian. His final speech? To every student who ever felt invisible, remember, you are not alone. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Speak it. Live it. Change the world with it. And as he spoke, I looked around. No longer just students. We were the future, standing tall. Life lesson. Leadership isn't about being the loudest. It's about being brave enough to speak, even when your voice shakes. Questions for you. If you had one message to give the world, what would it be? What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? Have you ever used your voice to help someone else? Share in the comments. Let your words inspire the next generation. Quote of the day. Our lives began to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Martin Luther King Jr. Your English journey through this story. You've just completed a 20-part motivational story in English. Along the way, you've learned vocabulary about justice, power, and leadership, real English speech examples, listening skills through storytelling, life lessons to grow not just your language, but your mindset. That's an achievement worth celebrating. What's next? Don't stop now. Listen to the next powerful story coming soon on Epic English Stories. The Girl Who Refused to Give Up. a true story of language and grit. Want to learn English the smart way? Stories like this make fluency fun and unforgettable. Thank you for joining us on The Boy Who Stood for Justice. Now, go tell your story, because the world needs it.